So this is Sειρά. It's beautiful.
To me, it's the ugliest place on earth.
I don't think you should keep punishing yourself for what happened.
I didn't come here to punish myself.
So this was episode Destiny, originally called Why and Where, which myself and RJ tried to answer the question, what made Xena so Meena? So this is kind of I think it's the first backstory that we told as to who Xena was and why she got to where she was.
You've changed, Xena. Like this valley. Once it was a place full of death and violence, but now it's full of beauty and life. The same kind of change has happened to you.
I wish I could see it that way.
I also elected to direct it, although it caused a little family strife, as I will explain as we go through this. So it's interesting when you direct something that you can never watch it, nor can you think about it without thinking of all the mistakes that you made along the way. So I only see things that I wish I had changed or shot differently or what happened on the day, and probably explains why Lucy and Renee were never big fans of watching episodes when they were done. And they said, well, we were there, we know what had happened, why do we have to be there? This was Xena revisiting Callisto's town, where her arch nemesis Callisto was kind of born out of the fire that Xena and her men set in this town. This is Slade, who Lucy and Renee both loved as a stuntman, and over the course of our 6 years, he just got bigger and bigger until he became he went from being a dancer to like the leading weightlifter, muscle guy, or bodybuilder in New Zealand. And this is a standard Xena fight. If you notice anywhere there's a fight, there's sand, so that we could hide the stunt mats underneath and cover them with sand so the stunties can take endless falls and not really get hurt. So if you watch pretty much any episode, there's always something underneath where we stage fights, even if it's just a carpet, because they're concealing the mats underneath them. In order to keep the same stuntmen for many years, we had to give them some consideration so they could keep working. It's always interesting as a director where you're shooting a scene and then you say, oh, I didn't get anything, and then the second unit and the stunt people go, oh no, we know what to do. And you get all these flips and that without Xena's head in it, and all these big action scenes that you really had asked for a little bit, but they had more time, and where the stunt coordinator will be there and say, no, just get a shot of her up on the tree and a shot of her here, and we can fill in the rest of it. So that was really one of the beauties of Peter Bell and Paul Grender and the different second unit directors, is they really mastered the art of shooting these huge stunt fights without ever seeing the lead actor's face. Carl Urban, who has now gone on to be a big Hollywood movie star, on his way to it. Eventually he makes his appearance here as Caesar. He had been in a couple of episodes, or I believe 2 episodes before, of I think 2 of Xena, and I always thought he was an incredibly charismatic, charming guy. And when we decided to do the story of young Julius Caesar and Xena crossing paths with him, he's kind of the person who first came to mind for that. And although I looked at many other actors in America and that, I always kept coming back to Carl as Caesar. So 10 years before Xena is where we meet her on her journey with Gabrielle, we were saying that she was kind of a pirate, but not a really bad person. She hadn't been spun bad. Her village had been attacked, and she kind of went off to get revenge, but wasn't really the Xena that was the murdering warlord. But via this episode, she got spun out in a bad fashion. And this boat was all built on shore, so this was actually on a hilltop, so you could look off in any direction and not see that there was no ocean there. In fact, this boat was then covered with apple boxes and turned into a fortress for the price later on. And then when we'd use it again, we'd take the apple boxes off on one direction and be able to use this side of the boat. and the other side was the backside of a fortress. That was really a testament to the brilliance of Rob Gillies. This was a scene as a young, inexperienced director that I was about to get myself in terrible trouble in, because I had about 2 hours to shoot it, and had storyboarded all these little bits and pieces that I started to pick off. And suddenly the director of photography, Donnie Duncan, came and said, "You're never going to get each of those bits and pieces. Here's how we should cover it." He held my hand and guided me through how to get 20 shots or 20 close-ups in 2 hours. And it was tremendously beneficial in learning. Great learning experience to be told, okay, here's how you're going to cover this scene in order to get everything.
Tell them to send 100,000 dinars if they ever want to see... What's your name?
Caesar. Julius Caesar.
Caesar, Julius Caesar again.
Kind of the inspiration for this episode came from a Colleen McCullough novel, First Man in Rome, or one of her Roman ones, about Caesar, who was actually kidnapped by a group of, or taken ransom by a group of pirates, and remained with them for a year and became very good friends with them, and jokingly, and during all that period of time, kept saying, "But I'm going to come back once you free me, catch y'all and kill y'all." And they just laughed and laughed and laughed at him. And sure enough, with time, once he was ransomed, he did. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have Xena be that pirate. And because I wanted to do a seafaring one, it all kind of fit in together. I had just forced production to build this boat that they called Rob's Folly. One of the things that both RJ and myself really liked about Xena was that it was kind of a world without color. There was all kinds of people, and so we thought it would be interesting that even though it was Gaelic, that we wanted to find a way to have a black Gaelic character who taught Xena the pinch. And I kind of said, RJ, I'd like to do this, and he found a way in the script and the writing to kind of cover that. So we were able to have this young girl with the Gaelic connection and a Gaelic sounds backing her, who was still black. We found Ebony Smith, and I just thought she was a wonderfully charming young actress. Kind of filled the bill as the person you'd least expect to teach Xena her trademark. It was interesting being the executive producer and the boss and the director, because on television, the director's kind of chump du jour, and is not really given the same respect as a director on a feature film. So it was very hard for Eric and Chloe, the producers responsible for money and schedule, to come and really pressure me to wrap everything as I needed to. But they did, and I tried to maintain my my director's cap on and not my executive producer of the series cap. So one of the things that really made Xena work was Nyla Dixon's costumes over the first 4 years were incredibly authentic and always looked great. They didn't look cheesy anyways. And we probably put Lucy and Renee in hundreds of different costumes, even though the audience thinks of Xena in her brown leathers and Gabrielle in her byless green sports bra. We changed their costumes as often as we could, and in this episode, Xena probably wears 4 or 5 different costumes, and each one was its own little work of art. Originally, the episode was called Why and Where, but after watching this over and over again in the editing room and cutting it, I went and said, "Oh, let's call it Destiny." They talk about destiny, and it seemed to work better. Xena's breastplate on that girl's shirt, I'm not quite exactly sure where it came from. It's not one of those things you ask for. It just shows up on the day, and you go, "Oh, well, that was nice. Somebody thought about that." And in the wardrobe department, and incorporated that theme into the rest of the episode and into the series. That little brooch, that Celtic thing, was the same thing the young girl that Xena was trying to save in the opening teaser was wearing. And that was Xena's, what caught Xena's eye was that little brooch. And I don't know that the audience ever got that. And I tried to sell it with the young girl as to why Xena cared about her, because she came from the same area or tribe as the person who taught her the pinch, but it never really paid off. It was too subtle. This scene, I think Donnie Duncan did a great job, the director of photography, kind of helping me in creating a mood with lighting so you felt you were on a boat, and it was this huge build, and to put everything on bungees so you felt like the lights were moving like they would on a boat, and still create beauty lighting for Lucy and for Caesar, or for Carl. But it really helps sell that we're on a boat. I always cursed myself for never getting a proper master of this scene. I kind of got talked out of it by compromise. That we were behind schedule, so you never got the feeling that they were circling a bed, because it was all about circling a bed and where they going to end up on it. Really thought Lucy and Carl did a great job of selling kind of this underplayed passion.
I bet you know a lot about conquest.
Yes. I love it. Pursuing the enemy. Breaking down his defenses. Cutting off his only path of retreat. And then closing for the kill.
Some enemies are harder than others.
Oh, I count on it.
It's always interesting to work with actors and figure out in scenes what the intent is, and I really thought that they did a great job, especially on with my questionable direction. Our little miniature that we shot for Hercules and used over here, kind of matched everything back into it. Really shouldn't try to shoot miniature boats on water. That's daylight. That tough thing to get away with. That was a big hose on the front of our boat and a rocking camera. If you notice all those shots, no one's on those boats because they're about 8 feet long. Eventually, when we did get a boat, one of the biggest problems was we had to sail so far out of Auckland in order to not get any other boats around us, and we were endlessly dogged by big cruisers who just would follow us around and refuse to clear for shots, and it proved to be a real pain in the neck. Directing makes you a better executive producer because it makes you think about what the director thinks about and not just the story. So you have to be concerned with what every single department brings to the party. As an executive producer, just working in mainly with the writing staff and in the editing, you don't think about all of the production problems and compromises that the director had to make to deliver the footage. So I think it's really important, and plus on a TV schedule, it's an incredibly humbling experience, especially when you get into trouble and you have to turn to the people who look to you as the boss and say, hey, you got to help me get out of trouble here. What do I do? I found it a really good experience, and it's a different type of storytelling than just script writing. So it's I really think that any writer who ever got a chance to direct something would have a whole new appreciation for the process.
Divide and conquer, my friend. You divide a woman's emotion from her sensibilities, and you have her.
I think this was the first crucifixion on Bethel's Beach. Probably not the last, but I stole this shot from Scorsese. Watched The Last Temptation of Christ to see how the heck did they do that? I went, oh, I know what they did. My wife's always bugged that she didn't sell this better.
I could have sold you and all your friends into slavery, Xena. But that's what any common warlord would do.
Both Stephen Sears and myself are huge fans of history, and Stephen being one of the other writers. after we did this, which is really our first kind of historical episode, we really embraced that idea of a time and place of Xena, even though for 2 seasons we really didn't care. It happened, you know, in a time when she found the Ark and did 10,000 other things. Suddenly we played to a very specific piece of history. But after this, Stephen and I went out to lunch and talked about all the fun things we could do of playing with Xena against Rome and Pompey and Crassus, and we did. We really embraced it until we got to the end of season 4, where Xena's responsible for poisoning Brutus's mind so that he stabs Caesar. Xena getting her legs corrected from being broken. Nothing like a good bone popping. This shot I made such a mistake on, and it cost me half a day, and it didn't work, and eventually I simplified it because one was lying one way and one was lying the other, and I tried to do something incredibly tricky, and it just didn't work. And I lost a half day screwing around, and that was a valuable lesson on television. You can't try anything too tricky, and if it doesn't work within a half hour or an hour, you got to walk away from it and say, all right, that wasn't going to work. And this coming moments are what RJ and I eventually decided was what made Xena bad. Otherwise, when the young girl asked, do you have any anger towards Caesar, and she was taking her time answering, we always thought she was going to say no, or but in Malila being killed and this whole sequence unfolding like it did, this is what spun Xena in such a fashion, and she says so in the moments coming up here. Finally, we kick back into the big Bulgarian music because she was just an ass kicker from Thrace. Put a big piece of false hair just to get that one gag that she wore the entire time, although you never really noticed it. But it was to make that one hair whip gag work here, which I knew I wanted to do from the beginning. And this is the birth of evil Xena. From this point out, was actually shot to play differently. It was closer to the end of A Doctor in the House, but then when after Lucy's accident, we went, no, she's going to stay dead. We'll do a whole episode where she inhabits Bruce Campbell. This whole sequence was totally different, and I didn't know what it was going to be until the night before it shot, and then I thought, oh, I should go back to what made her. And so I walked into the set in the morning and said, no, can you guys drag that cross from wherever it is, and I'm going to shoot it all against blue screen because it was in some dark space with a big circle around it. And I went, you know, that's not going to work. And so I said, no, bang these blue screens in. I'm going to shoot it all like this. And it was a real scramble and to production that I had changed everything walking in the morning. It took them a couple hours to gather all the stuff that I needed for that scene. But it came, and Eric and Chloe showed up and kind of wide-eyed, wondered what the hell was going on, and I assured them that I was going to get out of there by the end of the day. But I was glad that I actually changed it from what was originally scripted. I think if there's a script lying around, or if people ever want to look, that is there's a different ending to this than what is scripted. And to all you young directors, my only word of advice would be trust those around you. It's not a one-man show, and until you've shot enough stuff, you're not Hitchcock or Spielberg. Thanks.